Dear friends, this is Sunil Jain, Chartered Accountant. This is my second session on the subject FEMA. Unfortunately, the lockdown continues, and so is the time available with all the professionals to share their knowledge and sharpen their skill. In my first session, I covered the topics of overseas remittance facilities available to resident Indians and liberalized remittance scheme available to resident Indians. In my second session, in extension of the same, I would cover the topic relating to overseas direct investment in companies and joint ventures by resident individuals. May I clarify that this is different from other ODI, that is overseas direct investment by companies, LLPs, partnership firms, and export houses. This facility of ODI by resident individuals is besides that facility for which there is a comprehensive regulation. This facility has been extended for resident individuals who may not be into business at all, but they still want to create a project outside, or they want to enter into some sort of JV, and they want to own share capital in the company outside. So this is the topic today which I would like to cover, and I hope you enjoy it. Now coming to the statute which covers this kind of investment under general permission, this is regulation 21A of foreign exchange management regulation relating to overseas direct investments. Now 21A gives a specific general permission to all the resident individuals to invest within the limit under liberalized remittance scheme in companies which may be owned by them 100% or which may be into JV with other investors. Those investors can be residents. Those investors can be non-residents also. Those investors can be individuals. Those residents or non-residents can be companies or corporates as per the law of that country. Now, besides that, once notification was issued in March 2013, notification number 263, which covered the terms and conditions under which such investment can be made. Now, if we go by master directions number 7 and number 8 of 2015-16, they also touch upon this. So in a way, this scheme is to be within the ambits as set out in liberalized remittance scheme, in ODI regulation and notification number 263 and schedule 5 of the overseas direct investment regulation. So if we see all together, we need to be sure that we are not violating any of the conditions mentioned therein. Along with that, you can go through the master direction also, number 15/1516 on overseas direct investment. So within the ambit of this, we need to we can make the investment under this scheme. Now, what are the conditions attached to such? Now, this says acquisition or setting up of a JV or wholly owned subsidiary by resident individuals. Although word wholly owned subsidiary seems a bit odd here, the intention would have been to own a company 100%. Now, in case of individual, there is no subsidiary concept. So I don't know why there is a this terminology of wholly owned subsidiary. JV is understandable that I want to enter into a JV. So let us see it that way, that they are talking about a company to be formed outside India, either with 100% equity owned by you or by a JV partner. Now, who are eligible? Again, resident individuals. In my first session, I touched upon that subject, who are resident individuals. And resident individuals does not necessarily mean citizens of India or citizens of, it is as per the FEMA definition given in section 2 clause V of the act. Now, what kind of investment can be made? If we see the ODI regulations talk of financial commitment. They say that any Indian company or LLP or registered partnership firm or export house, up to what extent they can make the financial commitment. Now, financial commitment has been defined to include equity, preference share, convertible preference share, even non-convertible preference shares, loans, guarantees, performance guarantees, and everything. But when it comes to overseas direct investments by individuals under this scheme, all that is not available. The investment can either be in the shape of equity or in the shape of compulsorily convertible preference shares. So there is no question of giving any loan or taking non-redeemable preference shares or non-convertible preference shares or giving guarantees. Now, what is the limit? How much amount can be invested in the scheme? The limit again is within the limit of liberalized remittance scheme. Now, liberalized remittance scheme we discussed in my first session. The limit is $250,000 per annum per person. Now, per annum per person, but that limit includes all your current account transactions. That include foreign exchange availed by an individual for other purposes like for traveling, for donations, for gifts, or making other investments outside, for opening bank account outside. So within that overall limit of $250,000, you need to see how much is available with you, and that much investment can be made by incorporating a company or entering into a joint venture. Now again, as was in LRS, here also the limit is per member of the family. So family can join hands to make a larger investment. Now in this case, the clubbing of the limit of all is possible only if the persons who are clubbing together their $250,000 limit are joint holders. Either they should hold their shares in their respective names and make the investment. But if the limits are subsumed within a larger limit, then there should be joint name. If they are acquiring shares, they should be in the joint name of the persons who are pulling together this limit of 250,000. Now, as I have already discussed, that it is to be either equity or preference. Loan is not permissible. Under liberalized remittance scheme, we saw that loans are permissible only to non-resident relatives, and that too there were certain conditions attached. They should be with a minimum maturity of 1 year. They can be credited only to an RO account. So the facility that I would partly buy preference shares or convertible equity shares and partly I would lend the money to the company, no, that is not possible in my opinion. And there cannot be any other commitment also. For example, I cannot make any financial commitments on behalf of such company. Now, what can be the financial commitments? Suppose the foreign company, the company which I formed outside, they need to avail loan. They need to avail loan from some, say, financial institution outside. Can they avail the loan outside? Yes. The company once has been formed outside India, it is to be an operational company, so they can borrow also for their operational purposes. Now question is, can as an investor, as a stakeholder, I can lend guarantees to such borrowing? The law says no. You cannot extend any guarantee, you cannot mortgage any property, you cannot lend any security against that loan, because that will be financial commitment, not even performance guarantee. So be sure that under this scheme, it is a straight away. Form a company, invest in equity or convertible preference shares. That's it. Nothing beyond. No further financial commitments under this. Now, next is, for what purpose I can form the company. The company should be for legitimate business activities. Now, legitimate business activities, there is always a confusion. For example, in India, we cannot have lotteries. But abroad, in few countries, the lottery business is permissible. Now, will that be considered as legitimate business activity? In my opinion, no, since under current account transactions rules and liberalized remittance schemes, the funds are not available for lottery. So that way we need to be guided by, and we need to interpret it that way, that whatever business has got a legality in India, I should be doing that kind of business only. Second very important condition is that my company should be an operational company. Operation mean it cannot be an investment company. It should be doing some operations. Now take for example, I form a company outside, buy a property, lend the property on rent, and the company is not doing anything except for earning rental income, and I am accumulating the rent outside. Is it permissible? In my opinion, no. In my opinion, this does not amount to an operational company, because operations means there should be a continuity. There should be that I am carrying out a sort of venture or a business. Now take a similar example where I have bought a property, I have converted into service apartments, and I am providing logistic supports also, the way we have co-working spaces here. Now that becomes a business. So suppose I take a building on rent and I run it as Airbnb. Now that becomes a business in my opinion. It is not, then becomes an operational company. But simply buying a property and letting it out, there should be some business activity attached to saying that I am an operational company. What businesses I cannot do besides not doing illegitimate businesses, I also cannot indulge in real estate, banking, and financial services. These three also are forbidden. Now, what is real estate? Does everything relating to real estate is covered? No. They say what is real estate business is defined in the regulation. It says buying and selling of real estate, where I simply indulge in trading. I go and buy a few flats, then sell them, buy a few plots, sell them, buy a property, sell that property on the margins, the arbitraging. So that they say is not permissible. Now, what is not included in real estate business is development, township, construction of residential complexes. If I'm doing that sort of business, that becomes an operation. That becomes a business. That is not real estate, they say. So real estate, they have excluded all such things. That means I can invest, I can become a developers there, I can become a construction company there, I can acquire a property, build up a property, sell the property. So this amounts to business activity, but simply trading into property is not permissible. Now, next is whether I can have a step down subsidiary. If we see the overseas direct investment regulation, step down subsidiaries are allowed. But in this case, they have specifically mentioned that no step down subsidiary should be formed. So the company should be operational company, it should be in legitimate business activity, it should not have any step down subsidiary, it should not be doing banking, financial and immovable property business. So all these conditions are attached to such kind of general permission. Now next is who cannot invest under this scheme. So they say any resident individuals who are on the caution list of RBI. RBI from time to time releases list of persons who are on caution list because some sort of inquiry or they are tainted persons again whom RBI feel that there should be a moratorium on any investment to be made by such persons. Second is where there are already some proceedings going on against the person before the investigating agencies, or a person who has been declared a defaulter under bankers list, because banks also declare the defaulters list, as you know. We know very celebrities names are there in the defaulters list who are not competent to avail this. although the amount is very petty for them, but still. Now, we have then coming to um, whether the shares can be bought at par or at premium. Now, the law says that if it is a new company, you are forming a company or a joint venture, the shares can be acquired at par and there is no requirement of any valuation report. Valuation report is required if I am acquiring an existing company under this scheme. I am entering into a JV in a company which is already established there. In such case, they say your investment at whatever price, even if you are buying the shares at premium, even if at a par, but it should be supported by a valuation report. Now, the scheme of valuation report is 5 million. If the investment is more than 5 million, it is to be by the merchant banker category 1. Now, where is the question of 5 million in this case? So, in this case, simply a chartered accountant's valuation or a valuation by certified public accountant of the country where you are making the investment is enough compliance so far as valuation part is concerned. Now, next is there is a bit confusion left in the regulation when we come to buying shares in an existing company, because liberalized remittance scheme, when it speaks of capital account transactions, it says under different clauses, it says you can buy shares of listed and unlisted companies. You can form a WOS or JV. There are two separate clauses. Now, my question is, suppose I am buying only very minor percentage of shareholding in an unlisted company. Will that amount to entering into a JV? Now, if there is no JV agreement, I am only a passive investor and I am buying shares of an unlisted company. The requirement of valuation report should not be there. But I fear that maybe at authorized dealers level, there may be some problem, and I think the regulator should clarify this part, that in what cases valuation report is a must and in what cases valuation report is not required, because that is very important. Now, coming to compliance is just like any other overseas direct investment. I need to fill form ODI along with form A2 and whatever the authorized dealer asks for. They do their own due diligence. They ask for the credentials of the foreign company in which the investment would go, their bank particulars, your bank particulars, and your source of investment, nature of activity which the company would be doing abroad. All that due diligence is carried out by the authorized dealer, and thereafter they permit the remittance. Now, if we see ODI form, one of the sections is required to be attested by chartered accountants. Now, in case of resident individuals under the scheme, that condition is dispensed with, and they say the self-attestation by the investor would be enough, because the limit is very small, so they don't want to bother the resident individuals to go to a chartered accountant and get the ODI form certified. So that is a compliance part. Now, what about post-investment? In case post-investment, there are changes. I may be disinvesting part, somebody else may be joining, I may be putting in more investment in the same company. All this must be notified to the bank within 30 days. The same authorized dealer which you have selected for your initial investment, he must be reported for any change in shareholding pattern of the company which you have formed outside. Now, subsequent to this, the last question is disinvestment. Suppose I want to liquidate my investments. Now, there are again conditions. First of all, for liquidation and disinvestment, your company should be in existence for at least 1 year from the first remittance you sent. You may have sent couple of tranches. So the 1 year they take from day one when you send the first remittance. So 1 year must lapse before which you are allowed to liquidate. Now liquidation can be through various means. One is simply liquidating and bringing back whatever money is there. One is merger. So merger is also allowed. Your company has merged into another company, that is allowed. Somehow, I came across a case which I was handling for one of my clients, where my client had already made a wholly owned company outside under LRS scheme, and subsequently he wanted to liquidate that company and start another company in the same country, but with a different nature of business. The nature of business was again permissible nature of business. So he wanted simply to switch from one business, from one company to another company. But it was not allowed at the authorized dealers level. They wanted us to liquidate the company, bring the proceeds to India, and again avail your LRS scheme to resend the money outside India in the new company. There, in my opinion, some clarification is required by RBI. Need to reconsider this issue, because in liberalized remittance scheme they have given the liberty of switch over from one investment to another. Then why not for this investment also? Because here, if I bring the money back and again send it, I would be again consuming my limit of $250,000, which I had already availed when I sent the original investment. But this definitely needs a concession from RBI, a clarification that switchover from one company to another company should be allowed. Now, what after the liquidation? They say maximum 60 days period is there to bring the money back to India. So you've got 60 days process after liquidation to get your money back to India. Another condition is attached, and that is a very, I would say, very that should also be relaxed, is that there cannot be any write-off. Now, question is, if I have formed a company outside, and I'm an entrepreneur, I have started a company, I'm not sure. Of course, nobody takes the chances of creating only losses. Everybody feels that he'll be making profits. But ultimately, projects do fail, companies do fail. And if my investment is eroded, they say write-offs are not allowed. Now, there should be some limit, because it's my money which has gone out, which it has gone within the limits, and it was for after due diligence, it was for legitimate business, it was an operational company, and everything has been reported also. And still, if write-off is not allowed, that means in the absence of anything stated, I will have to go to RBI to seek a special permission for such write-off, because business can definitely go wrong. So somewhere here also, I think the regulator should clarify, at least can give some limit of, say, maybe 10%, 20% write-off, 25% write-off, whatever they feel is appropriate under general permission, and rest can of course be under specific permission. Now, what reporting requirements? As at the time of investment, we have to fill ODI, and thereafter there are two forms which other companies and investors are required to fill. One is FLA and one is ODI. One is this APR. Now, FLA in this case is not required. Of course, APR is required. APR is to be filed by 31st December of every year for the preceding year. So 31st December, you need to fill APR. Again, in this case, if the investor had been a company or under regular ODI regulation, they would have been required to get the APR attested by a chartered accountant. Again, that condition has been dispensed with here, and it is not required that the form APR should be attested by a chartered accountant. It can be self-attested form. Now, question is, what are to be kept in mind? Now, take for example, which I have already discussed. I form a company, buy a property, and that property is a mortgage property. I have taken further loan in the company and I am earning rent, paying my EMI, but the property is in the company. Definitely there may be an issue, because this in my opinion is not an operational company. So beware before doing any such planning. Second is giving guarantees or giving performance guarantees or giving any sort of further financial commitment by the resident individual is not allowed. Now, besides this scheme, how else the individual can acquire shares outside? One is cashless ESOPs. They are permitted to be acquired by the employees. Then paid ESOPs, they are also like perquisites ESOPs. They are also sometimes the companies are foreign companies offer to their resident employees ESOPs, so that is also permitted. One is inheritance. Again, inheritance, I can somebody is willed in my favor, so I'm entitled to get those shares. Another important is gift from a non-resident. Gift from non-resident to a resident of shares is permissible. Similarly, right issues, if I'm already holding shares and I have been offered right shares, I can acquire the shares and send the remittance for the same. If on my holding bonus shares have been issued, I can take the bonus shares. If I have extended some professional services, very important. I am extending some professional services to a company abroad, and instead of getting the remittance from them, I ask them to issue me shares. That is also under general permission, and that can really be availed by the professional. Similarly, qualification shares. If you have been appointed director and you need to have qualification shares, but again within this limit of 2,50,000. Besides that, resident individuals can own resident foreign currency accounts where their foreign currency earnings can be credited. So from that account also individuals can make the investment. So these are all other mode where the individuals can make the investment. So again, I'll clarify all these which I have told you now are in relation to resident individuals, and the investment under the regular scheme by companies, by partnerships, even by sole proprietors who are export houses, or by partnerships, registered and unregistered partnerships. That is a different regulation with different terms and conditions. So don't be confused with that, because there the limits are very huge. Like a company can invest outside up to 400% of its net worth. So that's quite high. So beware that this is in respect of resident individuals. I think I've been able to cover up all the points, friends. Again, for any clarifications or queries, you can WhatsApp me at 9810140664. Thank you very much.